Please welcome Dan Kalnins.
Thanks, Don. Appreciate that, man. So just so everybody knows, because it gets pretty confusing from where we've been, but Ridley has been our services company, Willow has been our software company. We are actually merging them as one brand, just for anybody who's known us as Ridley for the last couple of years. So really, wanted to break this down. We've only got a short amount of time, but I want to just give you a quick spectrum of, I guess, the whole BIM for FM side is actually flawed unless you start talking about digital twins and smart buildings or smart cities cases, and mention that side. Take you through a couple case studies, and then give you, I guess, a few pointers on just some simple parts. If you haven't been there, if you're waiting for clients, if you're waiting for contractors or waiting for subcontractors, this is where you start and this is where you come together. So where we are as Willow overall, really about unlocking the power of the digital twin for the built environment. And I'll talk more about, I guess, what we mean by that side overall. But in terms of the challenges that talk about BIM for FM, a lot of you have probably been in there. It's similar when you talk about digitisation of construction right the way through the workflows, but it's no doubt that we know our industry siloed. So you've got people coming from the start of the whole BIM space and even smart building space or smart control space, is that we're not quite sure what the client wants, so we're going to wait and find out and wait till the client gives it to us. But what we have to do and what we have to look at is that clients often never know what they're actually after, so we have to take them on along a journey and back brief them, because trying to get to this space where contractor, designers, subcontractors and owners and maintainers especially are actually all starting to sing from the same hymn sheet, and I'll talk you through a bit of that side. And been here personally in construction space, but handover and commissioning chasm, it is absolutely painful. Anyone who tells me that it's not, who hasn't actually been there in that space, or anyone who tells me that it's not a problem in construction, I'll just ask you, point to one of your projects that you've been to or that you've delivered in the last 3 years that you aren't still touching day to day, or at least week to week or month to month, trying to actually work out where that data is and how that project's been closed out. And this is presented quite a lot, but I guess we talk about knowledge lost across project stages, but especially when you start looking in this space where it's not just across in the operations side. Now, it's not just across new tenants coming in and out, say, of a commercial building, but it's new operators. So say if you've got a JLL and you're moving to a CBRE, who's going to actually operate and maintain that facility. But what happens to that data and how does that come together from a client? Because if I'm a portfolio client trying to look across every single, say, 45 different buildings across the whole of Australia or internationally, how do you actually start getting consistency across that side? So controversially, I guess, we talk about digital twins, not BIM. And what I mean by that is that I think digital twins, there's a lot of different terminologies of it out there right now, but if you go back to manufacturing space and where digital twins actually came from, it was actually around really creating the exact virtual replica of either a building or a piece of infrastructure operates and works in real time. So the whole 3D space, 3D and asset data is really important for how you create and how you coordinate a digital twin overall. But what it's really about is actually having, yes, it's a single source of truth, and yes, it's about being visually intuitive for what you do, but it's really about how you actually then can start perform analytics at scale, and so that you can actually continuously improve over time. So if you're not connecting into live systems and live data, so there's kind of like three parts. So you look at your static data, say like your asset data, and hopefully it is not in a model from a 3D model, it is in a smart database that you're organising. Then you've got your maintenance data, then go and connect that to live sensors and systems and capture that in a spatial context in the 3D side, if that makes sense. And I can talk to anyone else about that later. High level side, yes, it's definitely about moving away from lever arch folders and USBs and CD-ROMs, and unfortunately we're still seeing a lot of this, especially in client side, but moving to platforms that they can really start using and driving. So what I thought I would take you through, so this is quick video to talk about, I guess, some of the digital twin work that we're doing with ThyssenKrupp over in Germany. So for anybody who doesn't know, ThyssenKrupp are the leader and the driver of the multi-elevator, that crazy one that's going horizontally and vertically right now, and really trying to change the way of how buildings are designed and connected. They're also trying to do this virtually, and we're helping them with this with Microsoft right now, which is we're creating this ecosystem of live data and static data so that you can connect into buildings in a much smarter way, basically like connecting in through an app store of the building that can go across a whole portfolio. So what you can do with that is that then grab your traditional types of information through, whether it be through mapping systems, through 3D side for how all of the data comes together, then you can connect and drive a lot of these different systems through 3D side, the data that actually matters from a 3D point of view. So just the maintenance data, the asset data for the key items you care about from a maintainable point of view. Connect that up with all your asset data, whether that be through an asset management system or whether it be through ourselves. Drive all your different smart sensors within the building and being able to trend that across time and start connecting that into your live sensors. So, you know, where the elevators are, what's the availability of those elevators, how's the space coming together. If there's an evacuation or a fire emergency, there's things that we're doing on this building right now so that we can actually start doing scenario planning and live planning for when some of those evacuations are occurring, where the people are and some of the analysis of that side. Connect that into all of your maintenance information for how you actually scan those assets coming together. And you can start actually connecting that whole digital twin back into how you access the building, how you drive climate control. And especially something really interesting is that talk a lot about blockchain, and blockchain in operations side actually makes a lot of sense, because if you've got this is a multi-elevator for and how the subcontractors are actually maintaining those elevators. But if you think about it this way, if you've got live data and live sensors, you actually know exactly when and how a lift is operating. So you can actually track that the moment that it fails or the moment that there is an issue with that. So you can start writing contracts based off availability rather than just, great, I want 20 of your subcontractors to come and sit in my lobby and come and take coffee all day, every day, and go and put those little bollards around the elevator like most of the time I think we see most of the lift guys do. Sorry if there's a lift maintenance subcontractor in the room. So bringing that back to something closer to home, 567 Collins Street that quite a few of you, I guess, a few of you have seen in the space. This was one of the first parts where we connected up all of the 3D data, all of the asset management data, and connected that across the whole building to the live system. So this is looking at an individual floor for all the mechanical systems, all the tenant architecture. You've got the other parts there as well. But starting to drive changes in behaviours from an FM point of view so that they can use and search like an e-commerce system rather than just a navigate through 3D, which most FMs will just never do. They want smart data and they want searchable data. And then this is also connecting into all the live systems, so telling you exactly what's happening at that point in time. You can go and track that again through the last hour, the last day, what temperature was it, has it changed, is it hot, cold? And of course, we can't get away from these either, from O&M manuals and PDF data sheets, because we want to make it as easy as possible for the industry to change and just go and collect the data digitally that actually makes sense. Don't go and try and connect every single piece of data, and definitely don't do it within a model, because then unfortunately you're going to go and pay Revit and CAD operators and all the rest for years and years to come, which just won't happen to actually update that. So let's make it easy as possible for those guys to update and maintain that space. So we took this building for 567. So this building was for Investor Property Group. If quite a lot of you would know Mark Tate. So Mark Tate's been a fantastic advocate of the whole BIM and digital space within Australia. And we then took this on to 151 Clarence Street, which is a really good example where we've actually just gone into practical completion as of the last few weeks. I think it is the end of September was practical completion date. So one of the things that was really interesting about this job, and being in construction for most of my career, is that this was the first building that on PC we actually had 100% of the assets all connected, all issued, and every single one of the fields actually compliant and checked right the way through the place. Now, I can't remember the last time we actually had that within a construction side across all the different subcontractors and management at PC, and we were able to prove that and show that. And we're able to do that because we're able to show it live. So this is what we've got as our completion tracker within Willow. And what you're looking at, it's going to jump through relatively quickly, but it'll come back again, is that down the left-hand side, how many assets should you have? How many assets do you have? Where's the compliance of all those assets at any one point in time? And then if you can actually start drilling down into, whether it be project lot from an infrastructure point of view, whether it be from an individual discipline, so electrical, great, where's all my issues? They're with the switches, where are they? How many are there? And driving that from a data point of view and from an asset register and asset point of view, and then pushing that back to make sure that's also driven from a 3D point of view or from a spatial context and from a GIS point of view. So the back end of that starts to look like, I guess some of the basic parts for how asset registers and how online database type systems come together. But it's then about trying to drive and make that easy to use and make it so that you can drive a lot of the validation techniques, because working with a lot of subcontractors out there, they just want things easy. They want to make sure that, look, they actually want to do a good job most of the time. Whenever you look at 3D, be it 2D, be it as-built, be it asset registers or O&Ms, they actually generally want to do a good job. It's just if you don't catch them when they've done something bad, and if you don't do it quickly, they're off and they're gone, and they'll be off on the next job before you even catch them. If you show it to them live and you show it to them almost like a gamification that, mate, you're doing a lot worse than what the hydraulic subbie's doing, and the electrical subbie's absolutely flying, and you watch how quickly those guys start moving. And we actually still need to do a video of this part. This is taken just before PC, but one of the things that was interesting about this one was about 2 weeks before PC, I think we were sitting at about 50% of the assets were finalised in there. All the big stuff was there, but all the other parts were still missing. And the push and the drive that happened because they could all see it live and they could see it, the feedback updating, were actually jumping into it live themselves. And one of the biggest pushes I've seen at PC was great to see. So that's great from a buildings point of view. One of the passions I've had and that we've had internally is that how do you drive major infrastructure as well? And something that we care very strongly about is that how do we drive GIS? How do you drive rail operations side? So we actually paired up with Structon Rail out of the Netherlands. If you haven't heard of them, they're one of the biggest rail maintenance contractors in all of Europe. So Europe very different to here, and Netherlands very different. The Dutch drive on availability of rail systems and rail track especially. So the rail track in the Netherlands, I think, runs at 99.7% efficiency or availability, in that case, which changes the whole way of how the actual rail maintenance operators actually go and repair, go and check, and go and maintain that infrastructure. And that's what I guess we paired up with them to actually start driving. How do you actually change the way of how we operate and how we connect all of that information? Because predictive maintenance algorithms are sitting in most of those rail engineers' head, and how do we connect that up with software? So this is what we're up to in the rail space as well.
1 million kilometres of railway tracks span the globe, creating complex networks over vast territories, with thousands of interconnecting parts moving around the clock. In this environment, even the smallest interruption can have serious implications. Currently, dozens of different tools are used to manage networks. But with no interface between them, owners and operators are left to connect the dots on their own, often making critical decisions based on incomplete information. But what if there was a better way? A way to access a complete view of your rail network, operating in real time. A way to integrate disparate tools into a single, intuitive platform and create a living digital twin of your asset. One that's capable of producing powerful, actionable insights for decision makers across your organization. With the ability to predict faults before they occur, optimizing capacity, pushing network availability towards 100%. Introducing Willow Rail, developed in partnership with Structon, Europe's leading rail maintenance organization, and powered by the Willow Digital Twin Platform. Willow Rail, a new way forward.
So what that's really starting to change is that it's very different for how we actually operate things in Australia, and the trying to get passenger rail networks to actually drive to this sort of type of availability of maintenance and that space is still, I think they're interested. They're waiting for the proof. So what we've actually been working with is more so the miners and mining railway networks, because you go and save a few hours downtime on a mining railway network, you're saving millions of dollars in that space, and that's where we're finding a bit of love and a bit of fun in Australia as well. So last not least, two last slides. Where to start? Really simply, just if you talk about your drivers, your process and software side. So just drivers, it's got to be more than BIM. If you're looking at BIM for FM, if you're just talking about BIM for FM, then there's almost no point. You got to think about how your client's actually going to use and operate this data. That building just there was 567 Kalnins Street was 55,000 different assets, 15,000 live data points. The one we just handed over was 25,000 assets and about 10,000 live data points in that one. So how is the client actually going to use that? Because that's the data he actually cares about. And how do you connect that in a spatial context? Still makes sense. The whole BIM space, the whole 3D side is absolutely useful and important. It's just how do you actually drive that? Processes and standards, looking at about which equipment's important, how you actually review capability and capacity, and really keep it simple to start with. Absolutely, very important part. And driving software side, this is why I jumped in from being outside of the software world, jumping into software, is about being able to drive that whole automatic validation of not just 3D models, but asset data and live sensors. Connect that between the life cycles of projects for clients, and being able to drive that across portfolio and networks. And last but not least, if anyone, the reason I put this one in is that a lot of people come and ask us around where do I actually start, because the client doesn't know what they want in terms of assets or in terms of maintenance side. So just three really simple parts to go and look at. Look at the first two to begin with, but parts that actually care about from your client, anything that's active. Go and actually assess from a building management system or a live controls or any IoT sensors within the building. Start there, make sure all of that is actually modeled within 3D, make sure they've got an asset tag you can actually hook into. Then you can start looking into your maintainable equipment, like your doors, like your panels, sprinkler heads, etc., and make sure that you connect that in terms of your next step. Then you kind of have like your nice to haves for any of your other stuff. Whilst it's very important for knowing where ducting and where piping is, a lot of the other bits and pieces, you actually don't care because it's not trusted in the operation space. You just care where all your key assets are. So I know I've gone slightly over time, but thank you very much for your time. And I know that's a lot to take in, but just wanted to give you guys some examples over where is it being done, how do we actually get there, and happy to chat to anyone afterwards as well if you like.
Thanks. Okay.